Before the time when you could just say to someone, "I'm sorry, I can't help that. I have Tourette Syndrome," and they knew right away what you meant, a lot of people used to ask me what that was, or just look at me like I was crazy. When my mother was explaining it to a playmate's mom when I was little, the child's mom said, "She has two rats?" and looked at my mom as if to say, "Why are you telling me this?" My mom quickly corrected her misinterpretation and explained Tourette's in detail. As I got older, I like to explain it as a short circuit in my brain that causes me to make movements I can't control and say things that I don't mean. What I realize now is that I probably wanted to say, it's like being captive in my own body. My arm or leg makes a movement and I can do nothing to stop it. It's like someone else is controlling me. My childhood is filled with normal, kid-like childhood memories. Going to the circus, playing on swing sets, eating ice cream, and going swimming in the summer. Birthday parties, cookouts, and water balloon fights. But nestled in between all those are quite a few not-so-normal events, ones I would sometimes rather forget. I was diagnosed with TS at age 6. My parents had to take me to the doctor after seeing an Oprah episode on Tourette Syndrome that apparently had put a name to my recent behavior. My parents had never heard of TS before this, let alone know how to treat it, so they kind of let the doctor do whatever he thought was best. Well, not hard to guess what that was. Medication. I was put on my first medication at age 6. Between the ages of 6 and 12, I possibly went through 30 different medications. Whenever I got an unwanted side effect, they would put me on a new med to combat that side effect, and so on and so forth. I once heard someone compare it to the old kid's rhyme of the old lady that swallowed the fly. So she swallowed a spider to kill the fly. Then she swallowed a bird to kill the spider, and a cat to kill the bird. I like the analogy because this is exactly what happens. And the next thing you know, you're on 7 or 8 different meds, and you don't even know who you are anymore. You're doing things that you normally wouldn't, thinking things that you normally wouldn't. I now realize I should have been stripped of all my meds at that time and reevaluated. You know, peeled back all those layers of chemicals, and they would have uncovered the real me again, and yet that isn't what happened. I continued to be this drugged-out 8-year-old and did things that I can only hardly form in my imagination now. Tried to run my mom off the road, pulled her hair and punched her in the stomach, pulled out 6 of my teeth at once, tried to jump from a moving car. It hurts me to a deep point in my soul to even write that I did these things, because I know so well that I am not capable of any of those things and I would not hurt a fly. And that all these medications, whose intended purpose began at making these disturbing sounds and movements go away, had turned me into something I now realize was not me at all. I do not blame anyone, especially my parents. If anyone, I blame the doctors. My parents were only trying to make me normal and fit in so I could have a normal life in school. But they knew nothing about TS, so they put it in the doctor's hands. In 1997, I ended up being sent away to a school for children with behavioral problems. Thursday, November 20th, 1997. I will never ever forget that date. Finally, in June of 1999, with my medication and thus my behavior now stable, I was able to return home. To this day, I explain to people that that was not me during those few years of my life. I was not there, but buried under many, many layers of brain-altering medications. Being older and able to digest it all, I realized that much of my childhood memories after age 7 are not very clear, and I don't remember even some wonderful events, such as my first trip to Disney World. I seem to remember more and more as I get older, but it's hard to understand if I am really remembering, or am I just remembering the dozens of pictures and videos that make me think I actually remember the events. Looking back now, what I went through at such a young age has made me so much more of a stronger person. It has built the foundation for the person I am today. Throughout high school and college, things were a lot smoother, but my Tourette symptoms still made me stand out. Then in 2004, I saw something on TV that would end up changing my life forever. An episode of Oprah profiled the radical new experimental brain surgery to treat severe TS symptoms. It was called DBS, or deep brain stimulation. The guest on the show was a 30-year-old man named Jeff Matovic, who had been the first patient in the United States to undergo the surgery for Tourette syndrome. They showed the films of him before his surgery. He could not walk in a straight line without his legs jerking all over, could not complete a simple sentence without stutters and grunts in between every word, and had resorted to drinking from a sippy cup because one of his tics was that he would squeeze the glass in his hand so hard that it would break and cut him. He then came out onto Oprah's stage months after having his surgery and had not one single tic during the entire interview. He appeared completely normal. I felt so happy for him, and yet at the end of the show I was crying, not because I was happy, but because I was sad. I never wanted what someone else had so badly in my entire life. That something being for my body to remember what it was like to be still. And at that point, I was sure it would be decades before it could ever become a hope for me or for the rest of the TS population. Yet I decided to ask my neurologist about it anyway at our next appointment. He pretty much said what I thought he'd say, that the surgery was too new, not enough was known about it, and that insurance would never cover it at this point. For 2 years, every visit, I asked the same question and got the same answer. That is until March of 2006, when he told me that 2 hospitals in the area had a lot of experience with DBS surgery and gave me a referral to one of them. The appointment was not till August. To me, it was still just a pipe dream. I have no idea how I managed to get to August, but it came. I went for my consult with the neurologist at Leahy Clinic, who was one of the nicest doctors I had ever met. After evaluating me, she said I had one of the worst cases of TS that she had ever seen, and told me I may just be a good candidate for the DBS. It was at that moment for me that the whole thing turned from some pipe dream that I had once seen on TV into a possibility. I went for all kinds of testing, but the hardest, and the one that would decide my final fate, was the psychological testing. For what seemed like forever, the final verdict was that I was intelligent, my test scores were higher than most, and that I was more than psychologically fit for brain surgery. To this day, I cannot explain in words what I felt in that moment. I now knew without a doubt that that 10-year-old kid so long ago was definitely not me. This was me. I finally got called with a date sometime in November of 2006. The date was 5 days before Christmas. It was still not real to me that this radical, experimental procedure that had just been some guy on Oprah that I would never get to be like up until now was going to be me. Of course, I also knew that this surgery was in its infancy nationwide, and that the entire thing may not even work. But I had faith in my team. I had to be awake for the surgery so they could know precisely when they had reached the right target in the brain. So there I was, fully awake, with my skull open in an operating room, with probably over 10 students, interns, nurses, and neurosurgeons cracking jokes with the guy who was inside my brain. We were talking a lot of the time, and the remainder of the time I had to perform tasks like blinking and moving certain parts of my body when asked. I was discharged just 2 days after the operation. I remember sitting in a wheelchair in the lobby of the hospital waiting for the car, and someone was playing Christmas music on the piano. Christmas was in just 3 days, but I didn't really care. I had already received the most amazing Christmas gift I would probably ever get in my life. It has now been more than 4 years since the surgery, and there's not a day that goes by that I am not grateful for what was done for me. I know there are so many people out there dealing with the everyday struggles of TS, and they did not get this incredible opportunity. Although I try to forget my life in constant motion, I can never completely forget what it was like, and I don't think I should. TS and all the trouble that has come with it has shaped me into the person I am today, and has also made me appreciate the things that most people take for granted or don't even think about. But most of all, knowing what it is like to stick out and not being able to just blend in, and sometimes that can be the loneliest, most helpless feeling of all. These are things that I will never, ever take for granted again as long as I live.
I'm coming home, I'm coming home. Tell the world I'm coming home. Let the rain wash away all the pain of yesterday. I know my kingdom awaits, and they've forgiven